We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
With global pals, it's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast, the podcast where we talk about
Everything theater. I would say todas las cosas theater. For our Spanish speaking audience, I probably killed it, but everything theater. Hi there. And you know what I just realized, Ellen? My background is wrong.
Oh
Whoops.
yes, you're blurry today instead of
I know.
having our
I've got to
Everything Theater
get, let
banner.
me get my, we were having so much fun chatting with our guests. There we go. Before we started that,
I should have that background too. I've got nothing but junk back here.
that's not junk. Gail Burns is joining us. She is, hi there, Gail. How are you?
Good.
Berkshire on Stage, been around since
Right.
2010.
Well, actually, let's see, I wrote all this down so I'd remember it. Now I'm going to forget. I've been doing this kind of work since 1998.
Let me jump in. You
And-
had a show, it was Burns and Murray or Murray and Burns.
Well, first it was Gail Says, and
Gail
then I had the joy of meeting Larry Murray, and so we were colleagues. We had competing. I mean, Berkshire on Stage and Gail Says were competing, and then I was Gail Says was Cyber Squad, which means that an evil person comes and literally takes over your domain name, and you can't get it back without paying thousands of dollars.
Oh my
And
word.
I was literally sobbing in tears because at that point it had been at least a decade I've been doing this, and I really loved it. And it was just all gone. It was all gone. And Larry said, cheer up and come work with me in Berkshire on Stage. And then we were Burns and Murray for many years. And then Larry passed away in 2017. And we knew, I mean, this wasn't a sudden surprise. And so I went to him and I said, what do you want to happen to Berkshire on Stage after you're gone? Do you want me to kill it or keep it alive? And he said, keep it alive. And so this is all in Larry's memory. I do this for Larry.
And what is it you're keeping alive? I know, but you got to tell us.
Yeah, well, Berkshire on Stage is a website and it's right there. It's free for everybody to access. I've never been able to get a really hot domain name going, so it's just Berkshire on Stage, all one word, .blog. Why they stuck us with .blog, I don't know, but it makes it easy to remember. BerkshireOnStage.blog will take you right there. And basically what I do is, I mean, people read our reviews, but I think more people and particularly people in quote unquote the industry, or at least the family, the regional theater family, come to us for audition announcements and press releases. I have a page called Now Playing and Coming Soon, which literally lists everything I know of that's going on in the area. This is just legit theater. And then it has a clickable link. So you get the title of the show, a clickable link to the company, and the run dates.
Where do you
And
get
at
all
this
the
point-
information from, Gail?
Everywhere, endlessly.
Are they
And
sending
none of
to
us are
you?
paid. I mean, this is a complete labor of love. So, yeah.
You mean like Ellen and I.
Yeah, exactly. Like this, like what's so many, arts journalism is not paid these days, which is a very sad state of affairs, but crazy people like me keep it going, so it's
That's
good.
Tracy. You know, especially because I'm friendly with some of the critics for the papers in the
Right.
Albany area, and a lot of them are not getting the A-OK to go, if you will, into the hinterland to go
Right.
review. And some of the theaters are incredibly robust. So
Yes,
the
yes.
fact that you're out there in Western Mass and you do Northern New York, and
Right.
everybody on staff, as far as I can tell, is either a writer, director, actor, some combination thereof.
Right.
So
Right.
the bios on all of you, to say they're
We're
impressive.
good, and there's more to come. I've been I've got a few new critics who've come on in the last 6 months who are really doing a great job in your neck of the woods in the capital region of New York State. I'm dying to get some more coverage for us in the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts, because there's with the 5 colleges, there's a lot of exciting educational theater going on over there, and then of course up in Vermont too.
Do you get to the, do you get up to Dorchester?
To Dorset, yeah, and
sorry,
we're doing
Dorset.
one show at Weston this summer. We live, my 10 critics live all over the map, and so I sort of know who I can send to which corner of the globe. But sometimes somebody says, "Oh, I want to drive 2 hours to see that show," and they do. So,
Wow.
yeah, my rule was always I wouldn't spend longer in the car than one way in the car than I did in the theater.
So what's your criteria for your critics then? Do you want them to have a specific theater background, a background in journalism? What do you look for?
I want them to be able to write. And I want them to love the theater. Those are your 2 big qualifications. When I was a teenager, I used to read John Simon in New York Magazine, and I don't know if you guys remember John Simon, he's passed now, but he was the nastiest of nasty New York theater critics. And I was a very good little girl, and I thought, wow, to have a career where you could be nasty to people and they paid you would be the most exciting thing I could think of. So from my weird teenage years, I always had this in the back of my mind. When I got to college, I tried writing a review, and it was horrible. It was long day's journey into night, and I'll tell you a story about that later. But I thought to myself, because the college paper rejected it, it was a terrible review. And I thought, boy, you have to be really old to do this job well. You have to be like 40. And then the year I turned 40, I was given a paying job as a theater critic. So I do think age helps. Now, on the other hand, I do like to have a variety of ages, genders, etc. in my team. But really, you have to live a certain amount of time and really immerse yourself in the theater, whether that's community theater or you're tap dancing on Broadway, it doesn't matter. So you need some theatrical experience, and hopefully that would be on stage, backstage, and in the audience, so that you've seen the whole thing.
But a lot of the celebrated critics never did. They were
Right.
writers first and foremost.
Yes, yes. And I like what I know about backstage. It helps me understand what's going on stage. So, yeah. So I'm blessed that a lot of people who have they can write and they love theater and they have some good background. 3 of my critics have PhDs, 2 of them in theater. I'm not one of them. So, you know, I think passion is the main thing.
How many reviews are you posting on, you know, in a month?
Well, it depends on the month. These next few, you know, May, June, July, August, and even into September are heavy months for us. There's a big sort of switch in September between the big theaters that we get in the summer and educational theater. That's when your schools and your colleges kick in, doing some really interesting stuff. January and September are your quietest months. So during the summer, well, we do about, I think I have people doing 4 or 5 shows per weekend. You know, I've got 4 or 5 critics out. So if you multiply that by weeks and months, I know when I was doing it all myself, I saw close to 200 shows a year, which is nothing on what Patrick and Chris do, Patrick White and Chris Foster, you know, with their hats, and they're always better than me, but
It's
it
not
is
a matter of
something.
better or worse. They're just out there a little more.
Oh, they are. And I enjoy everything they do. No.
Now, I'll share a quick story about my short stint as a
Yes.
critic. When I was in high school, there's a great program called the Cappies. I don't know if anyone's ever heard it up here.
Oh,
It originated in Washington, D.C., and now it's across the country. where high schoolers go and critique other high school plays, and then there's a huge award ceremony at the Kennedy Center. So I was a critic for that program, and I remember the training where we had one of the main critique, theater critics from the Washington Post give us a little lesson, and he said, "Oh yeah, I bring my binoculars, and during the show, if I'm bored, I'll just start scanning the set, and if it's supposed to be set in like 1920s, and there's a book that was published in 1940, I go, aha, I
There
gotcha."
you go. There's a big black mark. Yeah, right.
And then the person who was in charge of our program said, "Please don't do that. Please don't be that critic." So what's
Yeah.
the thought at Berkshire on Stage? I know there's a lot of discussion in community theater, especially, of like the purpose of a review. Is it to
Right.
inform the public that the show is going on, to provide that critic's personal experience with that show, to be brutally honest? What's the take there?
Um, I interpret, and there are both camps on this one. I believe that a review I write is only my opinion, that the person next to me is seeing the stage from a completely different angle, et cetera, down the row. That, people, I mean, there might have been a death in my family and I'm seeing a very tragic show and I'm sobbing in the aisles. It's very personal to me, and it's very personal to you, and it's very personal to everybody else. So to pretend that I know it all, that my experience is the only valid one, I think is very rude. And so I don't write in the third person omniscient, nor do I require my critics do anything. I mean, they have very strong personal voices. That's what I really want, is I want those different voices in there. And the other thing, particularly with new critics, they feel like they have to like everything, and that it's not a publicity, it's not that's not what it's about. It's not about how many people like you or don't like you. It's about looking at it. That's the hardest thing to teach a critic, is you can say I loved it, you can say I hated it, but you have to say why. You can't just say this is terrible, don't go. Although I did say that about Barry Manilow's Copacabana, because it is terrible and no one should ever produce it or go to see it. But other than a few shows like that are just everything has its pluses and minuses, and you need to really, if you don't like the show, why? Is it the director? Is it an actor? God forbid. Is it the script? Is it just a crummy, like Copacabana, a crummy show to start with? What's the problem?
Gail, I've got to wonder, everybody's got an axe to grind these days.
Oh, yes.
And a well-known reviewer in the capital area was less than glowing about a show in the past 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, this is, if you know where I'm headed. And there were kids in the show. And some folks really came to him.
Yes. And that's my job for my critics. I'm the wall in between, because it's a lot of hard work. And as I say, nobody's getting paid. People think that theater criticism, I can't talk, is easy and fun. Oh, you get all these free tickets, yabba yabba. It's I figured it was at least an unpaid 8-hour effort each time, 2 hours of research, 2 hours of driving here and there, because we live in a rural area and everything's fairly far flung, at least 2 hours in the theater seat, and then 2 hours of writing.
So
that's a lot of work for a free ticket.
Right. So your response to those who feel comfortable taking on a critic who is writing from the perspective of as you said, their personal experience in the et al, if you will, of theater. It's not like they just walked in that day and said, "I've got gas, so I'm going to be mean." These are people who are doing this a lot.
Yeah.
So what would you say to those who want to
take on the critics?
Yeah,
people hate critics. I mean, my favorite story is I was sitting with next to someone I'd never met before, and generally I don't talk to people in the theater because that's not my job. That's not why I'm there. But she was asking about, oh, do you know about this show that's running over here? A different show than we were seeing that night. And I said, oh, yes, that's very good. And you might enjoy this theater and blah, blah, blah. And she said, wait, how do you know so much? And I said, well, I'm a critic, which I normally don't say, but I figured it was going to be pretty obvious. She stopped speaking to me. She stood up, she left. She never spoke to me again. She moved seats. She went to the house manager and got a different seat. That's how much she hated theater critics. So yeah, they're out there. I always joke that my face is on the dartboard in the green room, it's part of it. We're the rats in the theater. That's the backstage slang. There's a rat in the theater means there's a critic in the house. So yeah, people do. And yes, where children are involved, again, my instruction to my critics is always, we don't kill babies. That's not what we're there for. And generally shows are often double cast. So whatever the critic is seeing, they're only seeing one Annie or one Mary Lennox or, whatever your leading child actor is. And so you can't criticize the whole production having seen only half of it. And so you just don't pick on children. We had
I don't believe the critic did.
well, yes,
Don't
the
believe
critic
the
did,
critic did. It
and,
was
and
just
I
that
would
they were,
say
yeah.
shame. Yes, shame,
Yeah.
shame. Don't attack children ever.
And right. And this critic didn't.
Yeah.
They had a problem with the production as it was. And then people read and people see what they want to see too.
Exactly. And if it's your child or grandchild or, yeah, you have those strong feelings. We had a very tricky incident last year where there was a production, and I knew that the leading character was a child, but I did not realize they had cast a child, because very often when it's a big lead like that, you get a shorter adult. It's the Michael J. Fox syndrome. You get the Michael J. Fox and you put him in the role. I did not realize that, in fact, this was a minor performer. I also did not understand that this was a trans person. And it was a terrible mess because, I looked at the review looked fine to me, but it wasn't. And it was very hurtful. But then again, there were things my critic disagreed with in the show. She has her freedom of speech, so I have to balance the freedom of speech with caring for a child, et cetera, et cetera.
I know one comment that came up recently was someone, a friend of mine, reminded people of, like, critics have to be invited. It's not like critics are banging down your door and saying, you have to have us in, you have to have us review us. So that's something to keep in mind, that if you get a not so favorable review, I mean, that's part of inviting critique to come in.
There are theaters that choose not to be reviewed. There are places where I'll write and say, I always say, may I have a pair of press comps? Because yes, we review at the discretion of the theaters, always. And if they say, no, you may not, then that's the answer I have to live with. Yeah.
So what's your fave? Do you like dramas, comedies, musicals? What do you like?
Oh, well, I'm a big musical theater chick. I have a show tune for every occasion. I used to have the dog before I have now was a singing dog. And her big number was Tomorrow from Annie. I knew the words and she knew the notes, so she thought. And we would duet on that. But she had about 4 songs in her repertoire before she passed away last year. But no, I've always loved musicals. I always loved comedies. We were talking about, things that critics hate. I hate Tennessee Williams and I hate Eugene O'Neill. And I really hate A Christmas Carol. I will not review A Christmas Carol because I hate it so much. That's, but luckily no production of Christmas Carol needs a review. They'll sell out anyway.
True.
Yeah.
Because one of your reviewers says at the outset, she hates Sondheim.
It's
You
good to know who you're hearing from.
and then loved the production she saw.
She did love the
West Side
production.
Story, bless her, and she really loved it. And this is at McHayden, and
Yes.
they're getting accolades across
Yes.
the board for that production.
I understand I'm so jealous that I can't see things. I'm physically handicapped and can't drive these days. So also sitting with my knees at a 90-degree angle is very painful, which, 3 hours of King Lear and they're taking me out in an ambulance. So but I miss it. I miss it so much. I really do. Every time somebody tells me they're going to go review a musical, I start singing. It's very annoying.
This is sort of out of the ordinary. I don't know if you knew Sandy McKnight, who was
Yes, who just passed, which is
that's why
very
I'm bringing it
sad.
up. His wife, Liv Cummins, we had on as a guest last year. An incredibly talented woman.
Yes, yes.
Songster, writer, performer, and
Right.
Sandy was also a writer and movie maker. And I had the good fortune to be in one of his last Berkshires.
Great.
And just, I wondered when it comes to having just seen the Tonys Memoriam, is there anyone doing something like that at year's end? Is that a place that you folks, okay.
No, I haven't done that. For one thing, because critics aren't in the trenches. And a lot of the people who are so wonderfully involved in, particularly on a local community theater level, and we do review community theaters if they want us to review them, that we don't know your favorite lighting designer. This may be the greatest person in the world, and it's tragic that they're no longer with us and part of this community, and we don't know them. So I try not to, if quote unquote somebody big, what makes somebody big? But let's say if Julie Boyd were suddenly run over by a bus, then I would have links to obituaries and tributes and things. But no, I generally don't do it in a memoriam. John Trainer died a few weeks ago too. I don't know if you guys knew John. He was a Williams graduate. I live in Williamstown, so I always know things like that. But he was a Williams graduate and very active, but on a regional community level. He's very active at the Theater Barn. I think he played an inspector in their annual Agatha Christie more times than he didn't. So yeah,
there are a lot of folks here who know him because Theater Barn, when it was alive and kicking,
right,
a lot of folks did perform. I think Phil Rice directed over there often.
Yep, directed and performed a lot, and Kathleen Carey, who I'm a big fan of. Yep.
Aren't we all?
Yes, yes. I was so excited she got to make her Cap Rep debut the other month. That was fun. Yeah, it's hard. I shouldn't talk about, oh, I just love so and so or whatever, because that's what, as a critic, you should just keep your mouth shut and not say who some of your favorites are. But I guess I'm not reviewing anymore, so I can say it. Yay.
Do you edit? Is that what you're doing?
Yes. I go through each review. I try not to stifle the natural voice. As I say, that's what I want. I want the voice. So if Lisa hates Sondheim and she wants to tell you that, I'm not going to whack that out. Obviously the, periods, commas, spaces, spellings, misspellings, making sure we get people's names right, making sure we get people's pronouns right. I was particularly careful. I talked to Charlie Siedenberg at Barrington Stage, and I said, you're going to send me all the pronouns for La Cage aux Folles, right? Because yes, I need them. I need them. And I don't want to misgender someone or misspell their name, God forbid. That's very rude. So yeah, I do all of that. I lay it out, I format it on the page, and then I put in all the production photos. I tend to run all the photos that the company sends me. I run them as a slideshow. So you can go through and see everything that's out there, whereas most print places can only do 1 or 2 photos per review. You know, that's how I get my kicks these days. I look at the production photos.
Now, going back to something you mentioned earlier of the lack of payment in arts journalism these days.
Right, right.
Why do you think that is? What happened?
We just don't value the arts. I mean, look at, the classic comparison is always sports and arts. Look at the pages and pages. We got whole channels for sports. The Tonys are hanging on by their fingertips to any kind of a healthy viewership.
You have to watch
and
half of it
theater-
on some random streaming service.
Yeah, exactly. I heard a lot of complaint. I did not watch the Tonys the other night, I confess.
And then they didn't provide access to the red carpet for journalists. So
great.
Julie James,
Yeah.
who's the voice on Sirius, couldn't get in.
Right. So it would actually be better if Gail Burns bought herself a ticket and then wrote about it, which is completely legal. I couldn't call it a review because I haven't, again, you review by invitation, but I could write. I could say I went to the Tonys and here's what I saw. Yeah.
Is there
I
anything
try
you think?
not to do that for obvious reasons. That would get me blackballed in the critical community quickly. I don't do that.
Is there anything you think can be done, or is it just a massive societal problem that there's not an easy answer for?
Yeah, the revenue isn't there for the print. I mean, I started out like most people did with a print venue, and then it vanished. So what do you do? At that point, I did see the opportunity. Again, this was around 1990. So the internet, nobody had heard of an independent web critic. And so when I started out, I was very, very careful to always ask, as I say, I'm always, mother, may I, may I have a pair of comps, and, explaining where they were going to see my reviews, who was going to be able to access it, all of that, just be completely upfront. Also, I came in, I did my job, and I left. There was a colleague of mine who loved to help herself to everything on the buffet and got the nickname the human vacuum. I am known as Gail the Incorruptible because I won't even take a piece of cheese at midnight if I'm exhausted, after an opening night. I'm scrupulous that way with just not asking for more than I'm entitled to.
And by the by, I just took a quick peek because the numbers just came out just a short time ago. The Tony Awards viewership dropped 15% from last year.
Yeah.
3.5 million. They said, well, it was Father's Day. Whereas the reviews of the show were stellar. The contention is that's the way the show should be done.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's very frustrating. And I wish I could come up with a solution to the problem. I'm blessed to have 10 people who will do this for free. As I explained, it's a lot of work. They'll do it for free because they love the theater. There is also a theory that critics hate the theater or that they're all frustrated actors, which is not true. It's not true at all. I know I'm the world's worst actor. You won't see me trying to get up there and mess everything up. In fact, a running joke, many years ago now, there was a theater, might have been Schenectady Light Opera. They were doing Sound of Music. And someone sent out a thing saying, all lonely goats, please come and audition. And so I said, I can't get over there, but I'm a lonely goat. And so I'm known as the lonely goat. And the publicity for that show was, if you come to see this production, you're guaranteed not to see Gail Burns. And it's sold out. So I've thought of offering my services to other theater companies, just put on your marquee, no Gail Burns, and they'll stampede your door.
The reverse psychology.
That's
of-
right. That's right. That's right.
So, Gail, what's your estimation of the health of theater in this 413-518? You know, yeah.
Fabulous. We have, I think, one of the most exciting regional theater scenes, and we have such a great variety because we do have, sort of nationally known companies producing, and then we have really great local, what would be called a community theater or an educational theater. Wonderful thing about colleges, about educational theater, is that they can take the risks. That box office is not what they're about. And they can take the risks and do some really exciting theater and often do it very, very well. But it's a good way to sort of track of, I have many favorite playwrights, I'll say, oh boy, I want to see that because so-and-so wrote it. And that's where you get the opportunity. So again, that's why I've got the big list on my Now Playing page so that everyone can go see the fun stuff that's out there.
You're gonna have to get a ride over to Sand Lake to see, Patrick's the Harbinger Theater.
Squirrels.
To see the
Yes.
squirrels.
Yes, the squirrel.
A
We will
nutty
be doing the squirrels next week.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I love I thought it was great that was it Crossgates that let them come and take photos in their squirrel outfits. That made me laugh. I love that. Yeah.
As we're wrapping up, we're a little short on time now, but I'm curious, in your years and years and years of doing this and the thousands of plays I'm sure you've seen, any particular shows rise to the top of holding a really special place in your heart?
Well, the thing I always joke about is, every year when the people announce their shows, I go, oh, it's my favorite. I've got 20 favorites every season. But actually there's a play that's opening this coming weekend, the 20 weekend of June, at Shakespeare and Company, called A Body of Water by Lee Blessing. And I saw that at Oldcastle in 2007, and it fascinated me. I mean, that's one of the thousands of shows I've seen that really stuck with me. And so when I saw the title again, I was like, yeah, of course, I'm not going to get to see it, but I did have a nice conversation with James Warwick, with the director, the other day, because he was interested. He didn't know it had been done. I don't think this play's been produced much at all anywhere. So the fact that it had been done regionally and I'd seen it was, who knew? Who knew it was interesting? But then, I mean, Man of La Mancha always makes me sob hysterically. And, well, Forever Platt, I have a weird fetish for Forever Platt, which is not, I am not fooled. This is not great theater, but I love it dearly. So.
It's enchanting. So would that you could get over to Washington Park in Albany. You need somebody to come pick you up. The Marvelous Wonderettes opens.
I know
through,
it does.
And the cast is fabulous. And so maybe somebody who's listening says, Gail, come on, I'm going to give you a lift. Let's go see the show.
It would be wonderful. I do have Paula Kaplan-Reese is assigned to review for Berkshire on Stage. So she will be there for their opening, and we'll get a review. That show has been around a lot. That's the one thing I failed to do with Gail Says Berkshire on Stage. It drives me nuts when every theater in the region does the same show, the same season, the same month, the same week. And I thought, gee, if there was only a place where people could see everything that everyone was planning to do, that would solve this problem. Well, 25 years later, I have not solved that problem. But The Marvelous Wonderettes has been one of those shows that everybody's been doing recently. So I hope this production goes very well.
I'm excited. I've seen some snippets.
Great.
It's lovely. So Gail Burns, thank you so much. Everybody, you've got to check out, Berkshire on Stage.
Yeah, and let me know what I can do to make it better so that more people use it and enjoy it.
Perfect. Right. Perfectly said.
Right.
For our listeners, you've heard it. Great resource at Berkshire on Stage. It's been great chatting with you. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn. Thanks so much. And everybody, go see theater.
More theater.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything, everything.